Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You are watching Big Picture with me, Vishal, Dahiya, and today we're going to talk about the education sector reforms through which the government is committed to provide equitable access to quality education to all across all levels, starting from primary to the university level, and how it is being done in terms of ensuring not only the confidence among students, but also increasing their skill sets, increasing their employability, more use of science, technology, and research there as well. We'll try and understand all these aspects and how exactly is this being put into implementation mode and what tangible results are we expecting when this entire process comes, is implemented properly. And for more on this, we're joined by two distinguished guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Professor M. Jagadesh Kumar. He's the Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University. We're also joined by Dr. M.K. Sridhar. He is the President of Center for Education and Social Studies in Bengaluru and member of UGC, that is University Grants Commission. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to Rajya Sabha Television. And let me begin with you, Dr. Sridhar. Let's start by putting the entire, this issue in perspective here. Let's start by understanding what exactly do we mean when we talk about reforms in the education sector, and then where have we begun the process? Where do we stand right now?
See, let me put the thing in the right perspective. Now that national education policy has become operational, I don't think that we need to look at piecemeal approach to reforms. It is a complete picture. It is a paradigm shift. So that kind of reforms is what we are expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Starting from early childhood care, entire school education, undergraduate education, up to research in all different disciplines, in terms of governance, quality, access, all aspects put together, we are now talking about education sector reforms. So therefore, what I feel is the kind of reforms that we are going to see in the next few years, they are very comprehensive, holistic, and it is not just reform, tinkering with something or other. It is a complete paradigm shift from what we are and what we are going to be. This is what I personally feel.
Okay. And what are the key highlights of this entire reform process when we are looking at it, in the form of national education policy, which you're pointing out? If you could just list out in terms of, and let's look at it at all stages, from primary, pre-primary to the university level.
Yeah. Now, first of all, with regard to school education, early childhood care has been brought under the mainstream of education, starting from the age of 3. So it will be 15 years duration. The pattern is called 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. And the first 5 years, including 3 years of early childhood care, then plus 3 years, and last 4 years, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades will be secondary education. Second thing, with regard to the entire structure, is age appropriate education. Depending upon the age, the kind of development that happen in the kind of children, the education is given. And there is a lot of emphasis on improving the effectiveness of government schools through school complex. Vocational education and regular education, they are combined together. There is nothing like specialization in 11th and 12th. There is a 4-year undergraduate program in liberal arts education. And then there is an entire thing of autonomy for all the higher educational institutions. Mm-hmm. And there is a paradigm change with regard to the governance structure. So this is what I feel to put it in a very, very minute way, these are all the kind of things that are going to happen, whether it is professional education, general education, teacher education, this is what going to happen. So one after another, all these things have to be done. I think the previous year's budget as well as the recent union budget has also made some announcements and things are already on ground. Things have started moving, the implementation.
Okay, okay. We will come to the implementation part as well, and we'll try and look at the tangible, results which we are expecting in terms of achievements there when we talk about this entire reform process. But let me bring in Professor M. Jagadesh Kumar here as well. Professor Kumar, from your point of view, sir, if we are looking at this entire reform process via the national education policy, then how would you summarize this entire concept here?
You see, when we talk about reforms in education, whether it is in the school education or higher education, the central focus point is the student. Because ultimately, we want to make our students more confident. We want them to acquire better skills and become creative and innovative so that they can serve the country and the society effectively. So, if the student is central to the entire reform process of education, we need to see how we can make them good learners, because that is the starting point, whether it is the school or higher educational institutes. Now, we need to see how learning happens. Cognitive science very clearly tells that learning is a process which involves acquiring information, encoding this information, and storing it in long-term memory so that it can be retrieved and reused. And are we doing enough in our classrooms by keeping the child, by keeping the student in the center stage so that the student is involved in these activities? Because so far we have seen that the students are exposed to only lecturing by the teachers. But can we go beyond that? Because we know from the cognitive science research, which is very, very extensive, which clearly shows that the students can master skills only by doing things, only by observing and reflecting on the results, and also by using feedback from the others, such as the teachers and then the peers among them. And the national education policy, therefore, focuses on strengthening these learning practices inside the classroom and also outside the classroom. But
Okay.
that is only half of the challenge. The other half of the challenge is the teacher, because the teachers are not trained enough so that they engage the students in an active manner in the classroom. So therefore, the teachers also have to be trained at the bottom of the pyramid. Both the students and the teachers have to be taken care. So that is why in the new national education policy, we are talking about setting up the national professional standards for teachers. And there is also the centrally sponsored scheme on teacher education. So unless we train our teachers also so that they are effective teachers in the classroom, we cannot expect our students to be good learners. So both the things go hand in hand, and that is what the national education policy aims at by bringing in several schemes that we will discuss during the process of this discussion.
Okay, definitely. Training both the teachers and the students obviously has to go hand in hand. Let's now look at the implementation part, which Dr. Sridhar was referring to. Dr. Sridhar, when we're talking about the implementation of this entire thought on the ground, and this is a huge, humongous exercise because we are looking at a complete overhaul from the primary level to the university level, and there are various aspects to it, as Professor Jagadesh Kumar also pointed out. So how are we going to go about the implementation part here, Dr. Sridhar?
See, both the departments in the Ministry of Education, Higher Education Department and School Education and Literacy Department, both have already finalized a master plan for implementation, number one. They have identified what is to be done, what is the policy point, what is the action, whose responsibility it is, by what time it must be done, and there are also calculation, what is the finances that are involved. That kind of a detailed planning has been done, number one. Number two, they have also started interacting with various states, because if implementation has to happen at the state level finally. So they are already in touch with all the states, and lot of state governments have set up their own task forces for implementation. And in some states, there are already some steps already taken. For example, if you take Karnataka, the state where I am coming from, yesterday the government has made an order. Secondary school education and pre-university education, the boards have been merged, and it will be made one single authority for conducting examination. So like that, lot of efforts have happened, and even the bodies like NCRT, they are already started their effort for the curriculum frameworks, and also University Grants Commission, AICTE, we also set up various committees to look into all this. So therefore, what I feel is, including the Prime Minister just yesterday, he has exhorted how it will be Jameen par aayega, ye sab vishay Jameen par aap dekhenge, like that he has said. So right earnest implementation process has started. Naturally, I think 2021-22 will be the year which will start flagging off the implementation is going to happen.
Okay. So that's a detailed implementation plan there. Let me go back to Professor Kumar here. Professor Kumar, if you have to talk about specifically the higher education part, then there are various aspects which we need to take care of when we're talking about reforms, because those are the tangible results which we are looking at. One, ensuring that the skill sets of the students are enhanced. Then we are looking at their enhanced employability. Obviously, they will have to have a lot of innovative bent of mind there as well, which would have acquired that bent of mind, and so on and so forth. There are other aspects as well. So how are you looking at all these being taken care of in this new reformed process?
So let me answer in two parts. Number one, because of the 42nd constitutional amendment, education is now in the concurrent list. That means both the state governments and the central governments are responsible for implementing the national education policy. And that is the reason why you see that across the country, the state governments are coming forward very actively and joining hands with the Ministry of Higher Education and other central government agencies, and working out the road plan for the implementation of the national education policy, which is a true reflection of the federal structure of our constitution. But when we talk about the educational reforms, of course, because the national education policy was recently, only last year it was released and all of us are discussing, but parallel to that, many other reforms also have taken place. One of the very successful reform or the scheme that was implemented was the RUSA scheme, the Rashtriya Uchitar Shiksha Abhiyan. As part of this, the state educational institutes are being helped in improving the research environment and in improving the governance systems in the universities. Because ultimately, we have to remember that a large number of students study in the state-funded universities, and those universities have to be strengthened. And then we have at the national level the Global Initiative for Academics Network. As part of it, every university can invite top-notch experts from across the globe who can come and stay with us for a week and give lectures and interact with our faculty members. And then we have this imprint program, the Impacting Research, Innovation and Technology, through which many universities have actually collaborated with each other. One example is a university like JNU collaborating with IIT Delhi and working on top-notch research problems. And the Technical Education Quality Improvement Program is another very, very important reform that has taken place. I'm a member of this TAQIP, so I'm aware of how much work is being done as part of this to improve the quality of education and the research opportunities in the engineering colleges across the country. So when we look at the educational reforms, we need to look at in a very, very comprehensive manner. Let me give you one more very important thing that has happened in the recent past, in the last one year, 1.5 years. It is forming 10 expert groups under the Education Quality Upgradation and Inclusion Program. We call it EQUIP. I was a member of one of these expert teams, and these expert teams have come up with very good recommendations, which will, of course, be part of the national education policy as we are implementing it. For example, we looked at 10 focus areas, such as strategies for expanding the access to education and implementing best teaching and learning processes in our educational institutes, promoting and recognizing excellence, improving the governance systems in the universities, which has been long due in our university systems, and then most importantly the assessment, accreditation, and ranking systems. Lot of such good recommendations have come, promoting research and innovation, employability and entrepreneurship. How can we provide greater opportunities for students in entrepreneurship, and using technology for better outreach to the students, because not many students will be able to join in the university. So how do we reach out to them? And then most importantly, the internationalization of our higher education, and how do we finance our higher education. So many things are happening parallelly in addition to the implementation of the national education policy.
Okay, and indeed, those are very, very important aspects there, as Professor Kumar is pointing out. Dr. Sridhar, your point of view on the higher education part, sir, and specifically when we are looking at it from the aspect of skill enhancement, research, innovation, all these are really important areas.
Yeah, definitely the skill component, the research, innovation, all these three are extremely important in higher education. Let me tell you, any skill development, innovation, and things like that will not happen if it is at a macro level initiative. If somebody sits in Delhi and tries to tell everybody you do this, you do that, it will not. So therefore, the policy has very clearly laid there has to be an autonomy to the universities and colleges. So they will actually come out with their own, and that is going to spin off innovation. That is going to spin off research. And let me tell you, for example, when we are talking of skill, a particular software program, you cannot develop your students, all your students, for the same kind of program, for the same kind of skill. So therefore, if there is a kind of for example, some states are coming out with one district, one product. One district, one product. So the institutions of that district, that ecosystem must be built in such a way that they will try to contribute to that. That kind of an approach, decentralized, autonomous approach, will strengthen the skills on one hand, will actually promote innovation on the other, and it will also develop that kind of research culture. So it will happen in an autonomous, decentralized manner, and that has to now happen with all these developments.
Okay, that seemingly is the best way forward, Dr. Sridhar. But one more aspect here, which the Prime Minister also, underlined in his recent remarks, and it's actually, in fact, part of the new education policy, the focus on more and more local languages. So how is that going to come about?
See, first of all, language has to be taken as something which is very, very essential part of learning. Somehow, in the last few years, language is not treated as a utilitarian area. It is somehow treated as a non-utilitarian area. But language is a very, very important one. That's why the policy has very clearly said there is a foundational literacy that is needed for the schools and promotion of Indian languages in higher education also. So the best material of the world must be made available in the Indian language. I don't call it as local language, I call it as Indian language. Every such language is an Indian language. Then what happens? People who are familiar with their own languages can pick up this. It will bring about access, it will bring about equity, and it will also have that appreciation for the culture, the traditions, the local context, etc. So
Okay.
therefore, in the years to come, language is become a very important instrument for developing the quality of education.
Okay, definitely. Language is really, really important, and the focus on Indian language is there, as Dr. Sridhar is pointing out. Let's take a concluding comment from, Professor Kumar here as well. Professor Kumar, how would you summarize this entire process and, the way it is to be implemented, as Dr. Sridhar also pointed out, and the add-on, tasks as well, which are being done to supplement this entire national education policy, to bring those reforms in the education sector, which have been long talked about, long pending, but I believe now the time, as both of you are pointing out, has come to put them on the ground, put them in
Right.
a practical mode.
Right. You use the word practical mode. In fact, that is what the national education policy aims at. And as part of that, and in fact, even before the national education policy was announced, there were several other schemes which were introduced to provide hands-on experience to the students in order to make them good learners. One example is the establishment of the Atal Tinkering Labs in the schools across the country, and then the establishment of the Atal incubation centers in the higher educational institutes. You might have heard about the national hackathons that are conducted, and the huge participation of the students.
Indeed, those are very popular events, sir.
These are very, very popular events. And this is what the national education policy aims at, to arouse the curiosity in the minds of the students to learn by experimenting with their own hands, so that they become good learners, they become creative and future innovators. So, but we of course have a long way to go in terms of implementing these step by step. Therefore, we have a time plan of a few years to realize the goals of the national education policy. And for that, all of us have to work together on the ground.
Okay, indeed, there it is. All of us will have to work together. Thank you so much, Professor Jagadesh, Kumar, as well as Dr. Sridhar, for your very, very valuable inputs here to try and make us understand the entire gamut of reforms which is being put in place in the education sector, primarily through the national education policy, reforming the entire process of education from primary to the university level and the related aspects therein as well. It's a long process. It will take a few years to put every aspect of this these reforms into implementation. But the process has begun, and we'll keep you updated on all these aspects as and when we can in the near future as well. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you.